Hi there, welcome to my instalment of Comfort in Uncomfortable Places for Arc'teryx. Just to tell you about me, my name's Stuart, I'm an Arc'teryx UK ambassador, and I guide groups around the mountains all year round through my company, City Mountaineering. Arc'teryx asked me to prepare a webinar on the subject of comfort in uncomfortable places. And I really didn't know where to start because one person's comfort is another person's discomfort. It's all very subjective as to what's comfortable, what's uncomfortable. And so it got me thinking about my own personal experiences, whether it be hiking in the mountains, guiding groups in the mountains, setting up a business, or my previous life as an accountant. Now, there are plenty of times where I was uncomfortable. It took me a while to think back as to what I saw as uncomfortable. So, for example, giving a presentation to an auditorium full of people made me uncomfortable. Not as uncomfortable as talking to the camera right now, but it made me uncomfortable. And then you go to the other end of the spectrum, hiking with inappropriate clothing in an awful weather and nearly becoming hypothermic. So there's such a broad spectrum of what we perceive as discomfort. And what I came up with was the fact that all of those experiences make me who I am now. And I've learnt from all of those times of discomfort, and it's enabled me to grow as a person and do things that I think I wouldn't otherwise have done. And so I work in the mountains. I spend probably 260 days, 300 days a year with groups in the mountains. And then when I'm not with groups, I'll be out on my own or with friends in the mountains. And thinking now, I can't think of a recent time of me being in the mountains and being uncomfortable anymore. And again, that comes back to the experiences that I've had has enabled me to learn what's right, what's wrong, what makes me comfortable, what reduces discomfort. But then there's another element of it, and that's mindset. I've always been of the mindset of just go for it. If I have an idea, if I want to do something, I just go for it. And then you just deal with any hurdles that come up. I don't sort of dwell on the things that I can't do or the hurdles that may come up achieving my goal. And I think that's where a lot of people may fall down in terms of reaching their goal or reaching their ambition. It's not so much the discomfort of doing it, it's actually not doing it in the first place because there's so much thought being put in the perceived discomfort along the way. It's going to put you off. So for example, doing this webinar, I've been putting it off for days, maybe weeks, because I'm not comfortable doing it. And so it's easier for me just not to do it. But ultimately, it's about just doing it, just getting it done. And so my thinking of setting up this webinar led to sort of what the ultimate discomfort was, and it's not necessarily the physical discomfort, which is probably what Arc'teryx are thinking about when they set the subject of comfort in uncomfortable places, but it's actually the mental discomfort through the fear of the unknown that stops people from actually doing something. Now, everyone's heard the term life begins outside of your comfort zone. It's one of those things that's easy to say. You can stick it in a meme with a nice landscape, someone standing on a cliff top looking far into the distance. But how do we achieve that? How do we step out of our comfort zone? What do we need to do? When it's so comfortable being in the comfort zone, why would we leave the comfort zone? So I often think back at key moments in my life, the things that I've done or experienced or the decisions I've made that have led me down the path to where I am now. Now I grew up in the flatlands of Milton Keynes, so it's a bit bizarre that I'm now guiding in the mountains, but It was going to university in Newcastle and becoming friends with people from mountainous areas and people that were rock climbing and hiking in the mountains. And it was those friends at university then introduced me to the mountains and to rock climbing. And there was one time we went to a place called Hodge Close in the Lake District. We went for a little bit of a wander, and you can walk right up to the edge of this quarry. And so at the edge of this quarry, it's a 100-metre cliff, vertical, straight down to this ice-cold lake. And the first time I walked over to there, and I'd only been going into the mountains probably not even a year, I walked over to the edge, and I just froze. I just couldn't believe it. My heart just started pounding. I just got a bit dizzy. I had to sort of drop to my knees and sort of back away. And it turned out that I was terrified of heights. I'd never experienced anything like that before. And there I was at the edge of this cliff, absolutely petrified. Now, after that experience, I just went out rock climbing. I was rock climbing and rock climbing and rock climbing, excuse me, with friends. We'd spend evenings, days, weekends, just chilling at the crag, climbing harder and harder routes as we got more and more experience. And it was through rock climbing that then gave me the confidence to be on the edge of a cliff, to be on seriously steep terrain without having that fear. So I went from being completely petrified of being on that edge to now being a rock climbing instructor, and I guide people on pretty serious terrain in the UK mountains and abroad. And it's through that experience, that understanding of the risk that I'm undertaking, and building the experience of slowly increasing the difficulty and the seriousness of what we're doing, rather than just running away from it, and just incrementally increase that severity, slowly increases the comfort levels of being in that sort of position. And I see it in almost every group when I'm guiding with city mountaineering. People's tolerance of discomfort or risk varies from person to person, and often it's just chasms apart. And that's not just being on a rock face. It could be hiking in strong winds to even sleeping in a tent. If someone's never slept in a tent before, they're very nervous and quite uncomfortable at the thought of it. But actually, by doing it, then they realise it's just sleeping in a tent. But what is constant amongst all of these people that come out with me is having that positive mindset. They might be in a very, very uncomfortable position, but they have the positive mindset to just keep doing it. And now if you've been out in the mountains with me, you'll know that can't is not a word that I tolerate. It's not in my dictionary. And I do have people say, I can't do this regularly, whether it's trying to get to a mountain summit or a particularly difficult move on a rock. And just with a bit of encouragement, they always achieve it. So from going from I can't do it to actually doing it is purely mindset. Just get your head in that positive frame of mind and it will be achieved. And so it's about setting out. When you set out on your journey, that pushing out of that comfort zone, it's about maintaining that positive attitude. And by doing that, it will allow you to experience things that most people can only dream of. People that won't have that mindset of, yes, I can do this. It's easy to stay at home. It's easy to stay in the comfort zone. So the more you say yes, the more you can get out of your comfort zone. And the more that zone can then grow, and the more that you can achieve. So I have a bit of a reputation of coming up with stupid analogies or metaphors for things, and I came up with one for the comfort zones, and that's my balloon, Stuart's balloon analogy. So if you imagine a balloon, so the material of that balloon is the boundaries of your comfort zone. Everything inside that balloon is your comfort zone, and everything outside is the world around you. But it's outside of your grasp. It's outside of your comfort zone. But you'll notice that that balloon is taking up a very tiny space in the external environment. But you can grow it relative to that external environment by blowing into it. And that's you stepping out of your comfort zone. It's taking some of the external environment and bringing it within your comfort zone. So every small breath that you put in that balloon increases the size of the balloon. And that's like you taking one small step outside of your comfort zone. That's going to increase the boundaries of your comfort zone, enabling you to experience things that you may not otherwise have experienced. And now the more steps you step out of that comfort zone, the more opportunities that are going to be presented to you. But it's really important to do it incrementally. So you're going to blow this balloon up, your comfort zone up a little bit at a time. And every little breath that you blow into that balloon, the entire balloon gets bigger, and it increases the amount of opportunities that you can access. If you decide to step too far out, you put that huge breath into the balloon, there is a risk that the balloon's just going to blow up in your face. And you don't want that to happen when you're stepping outside of your comfort zone. That metaphorical balloon blowing up in your face could be catastrophic. So it's about taking those incremental steps. Now, I made the very serious mistake of pushing the comfort zone a little too far many years ago. I had lots of experience of hiking in the UK and rock climbing in the UK. Very limited experience of winter mountaineering in the UK, but decided I wanted to try alpinism for experience. Now, what I wasn't aware of at the time were the objective risks associated with it. You can do as much research as you like, but without having that incremental experience to build up to where you're going, you don't know what you're going into. In fact, many years ago, I fell into that trap of pushing myself too far, and that metaphorical balloon nearly blew up in my face. It was on Mont Blanc, actually. My friend and I decided that we wanted to have new experiences outside of the UK. Prior to that, the highest we'd been was Ben Nevis. We'd been on some difficult rock climbing routes. We had a little bit of experience in the winter in the UK, but we decided, let's go out to the Alps and have a go at Mont Blanc. So we looked at the price of guides, and we decided rather than spending our money on a guide, we should buy some shiny new kit, because obviously we all love buying shiny new kit. What was the worst that could happen? So we bought all of our new kit. We did a lot of research as to the route and any difficulties that we may encounter. We did a lot of training in terms of fitness, and then we had a plan. We went out to Chamonix. We went up to the Cosmic Hut for a couple of days to acclimatise and to play with our shiny new kit, just to get accustomed with how to use them. Then we went back down to Chamonix, followed the weather, and waited for the right window. So a couple of days later, we set off. We packed our bags and we hiked up to Tête Rousse, where we pitched a tent, and we stayed there the night. Then it was the first objective hazard that we were aware of. We had to cross the Grand Couloir, the rockfall. So we managed to get across that and scramble up to the Goûter Hut. Now the scramble, well within our means. We've done a lot of that in the UK. And we got to the Goûter Hut, and then we had to pitch our tents again. Now it's snow up at the Goûter Hut. Now this was back in the day when you were allowed to pitch tents, and we didn't have a shovel. So that was kind of the first indication that we were a bit out of our depth. We didn't really know what we were going into. Luckily another group lent us their shovels, so we dug a pit to pitch the tent, and we pitched the tent, and we had our pasta for the night, and then got our head down for a few hours before setting off for the summit. We got to the top, which was great. We saw the sunrise from the summit of Ben Nevis, but I was tired. My kit was a mess. I wasn't looking after it, and we needed to get back down again. So we then proceeded to descend down the ridge. And we'd expected the ridge, but what we hadn't thought about was what happens if someone's coming the other way up the ridge, which is exactly what happened. It's a busy mountain. So we were going down the ridge, and as a group was coming off, I just stepped off of the ridge to allow them to pass. Now I was tired, we hadn't had enough to eat, and the altitude got to me, and I tripped over the front spike of my crampon and fell flat on my face. And I did exactly what you need to do to get into the ice axe arrest position, but it just wasn't happening, and I was just sliding down this very steep ice. At which point I looked up, and the rope between me and my friend suddenly went tight, and my friend started following. And it was, luckily, it was a guide that was coming up, a very experienced French mountain guide, saw what was happening, ran and grabbed my friend's legs and pinned him to the ground so we couldn't go any further. And luckily it stopped me about a metre, maybe 2 metres from a sheer 100 metre drop. It could have been a disaster. Now we picked ourselves up and we got off the mountain, and it wasn't a couple of days later when it really properly hit me that could have been the end. Now that was purely down to inexperience, naivety, and unaware of the impact of altitude on the body. And I was lucky, I survived. But I pushed my comfort zone that little bit too far. And I should have built more experience in the UK and with altitude and things like that. And so pushing ourselves too fast or too far out of our comfort zone can increase that risk of catastrophe. Not everyone can be as lucky as me, and I managed to survive that and learn a lot from that. In fact, there was a couple of days later, there was a guy, a Dutch mountaineer, fell in exactly the same place, but didn't have a rope, and he fell off, and he didn't actually make it off the mountain. So it can be catastrophic if we just blindly step out of our comfort zone without really having that experience to draw on to actually achieve the objective that we're going for. And without that experience, we're ignorant of the risks. We're not aware of what those risks are until they happen, at which point it could be too late. And now I have this when I'm guiding groups as well in the UK. In fact, the easiest people to guide in my groups are the people that have the most fear, the people that have the mindset that they want to step out of their comfort zone, they want to go into this potentially dangerous environment, but they're also hyper aware of the dangers, and so as a result they go very slow, very methodical in their approach to whether it's rock climbing or maybe scrambling on a ridge. And it's actually the people that are more comfortable, that maybe are ignorant of the risk, but they're comfortable in that environment, that then they'll start forging their own route, not really knowing what lies ahead. And they're the people that I think within my groups certainly give me the most heart attacks, or close to, because managing that, people that are comfortable but are unaware of the risks, is where it can get very dangerous. Although that's not to say that going into the mountains has to be a risky endeavour. You've had most mountain trips, there's very little risk other than you're going away from civilization, and if you twist your ankle it's going to be difficult to deal with compared to if you're in the city. But it doesn't have to be risky. It's actually the mainstream media that use hyperbole to make mountain activities sound extreme or to sound like they're risky endeavours. But for me, I'm not going into the mountains to be extreme or to take risks. I just love being in the mountains, and I understand that the risks are there, but I'm comfortable because I understand the risks. I know how to manage those risks. And it's only when I know that I can understand the risks, I know what the risks are. For example, this time of year, winter, there's a high risk of avalanche. Certainly at the moment, there's been a lot of snow recently. You can manage that as long as you know that the risk is there and you manage it on your journey in the mountains and also in the planning beforehand. You can deal with it. So yes, there may be a risk of avalanche, but that's not to say that you hike in the mountains and you're going to be avalanched. You just need to be aware of it and avoid the terrain that's avalanche prone. And similar with potential rockfall, dealing with the weather, what's the weather going to be like. So it's that understanding, that planning before I go out into the mountains is really critical for me to manage those risks, overcome, say, that discomfort of uncertainty and that fear of the unknown, and that I'm then able to mentally prepare to leave my comfort zone. And I can then control the controllables, if you like, and then deal or manage the uncontrollables as and when they come about. Now, we talk about the uncontrollables in a mountain context. Okay, you've got other groups, other people that may be above you, but generally we're talking about the natural elements, and that's basically the weather. And that sort of brings me on to the more literal thinking, I guess, of comfortable or comfort in uncomfortable places. And that's essentially the physical discomfort of being in that wild mountain environment. And to me, it takes two forms. You've got exertion, so you're exerting a lot more effort to hike in the mountains, and then you've got the natural elements. So you've got the wind, you've got the rain, you've got the snow, often in one day in the UK. And there's actually a quote by Ernest Shackleton. Is something he wrote in his diary when he was stranded in Antarctica, and I absolutely love it. It's certainly no hardship. The persons living under civilized conditions would shudder at it. And I think that perfectly depicts not only my life right now, but it summarises life on a mountain expedition. It's basically, look, you're not going to have your home comforts, but it's certainly no hardship. And actually, when you're out in the mountains, if you're wild camping in the UK on a big mountain expedition, those small things become events in themselves. So having a meal with your expedition team is a big event. Going to bed from a cold environment, getting into your nice warm sleeping bag is an event. Having your first coffee in the morning, whilst in the city it's just a part of your process, part of your routine to go to work. Actually having that coffee in the morning before the sun rises is an event, and it's an amazing event, and it really sets the day. So whilst there are hardships, if you think about it in the comfort of your own home, once you're actually out there, it's really no hardship. You can just deal with it. Now, obviously, hiking, you're gonna exert effort in the mountains. It's not like running around a park in the city. There is going to be continual uphill. There's going to be uneven ground. Potentially, you're going to be walking 4, 5, 6, 7 hours uphill, and then having to come all the way back down again. So clearly there's going to be a lot of exertion, and if you don't have the experience to draw on, then it's going to be uncomfortable for you. And it's that preparation and understanding that there's going to be extra effort. And when I say preparation, it's just training. It's critical for staying comfortable in the mountains. Now, you don't have to be a super athlete. I'm not a super athlete. But I don't train, but I'm in the mountains all of the time. And so that gets my body ready for those big expedition type days. Although it's not always been the case that I've not had to train for the mountains. It's by virtue of being in the mountains all the time. I don't need to have a training regime. I don't need to go to the gym. But if I wind the clock back again to in the early days when I was just setting out on my journey to become a mountaineer, just following my friends around in the mountains, it was my first multi-day hike. So we had heavy packs, and we're going to go on a mountain journey for 3 days on the west coast, around the west coast of Scotland. And this is when an event that's forever known as Pastorgate took place. And this is something that my friends to this day reminding me of what I was like when I first started compared to now, taking groups out into the mountains. So like I say, we were going out for 3 days, 2 nights, and we carrying all of our food with us, even more alcohol, too much alcohol. We were young, that's what we do. And everything went well. We hiked in on the first day, had a good night that night, and then the second day, which is going to be the biggest day, we hiked around the peninsula, and then back up the other side through the valley. And it was then that I started getting tired, I started getting exhausted, and I just descended into what can only be described as a stroppy 5-year-old. I took my bag off my back, I threw it to the ground, I swore at my friends, I shouted at my friends, I sat down and I refused to move until they cooked me some pasta. I needed the fuel, I needed the energy, and I refused to budge until I had that back inside me. And in fairness to my friends, aside from a lot of laughter, they sat down, they got the pans out, we boiled water, they gave me some pasta, gave me a bit of energy to allow me to continue on the day. Now, like I say, my friends still wind me up about it, and they ask me regularly if I've had any more pasta gates with clients. I haven't. But what I did learn was the impact of hiking on my body, just on that one trip. And like I say, you learn a lot through the discomfort. And then you can take that discomfort and decide, I'm never going to do it again. Or you learn from it and you can then take actions to either manage it better or stop it from happening altogether. And in my view, I think everyone should have their pasta gate. And believe me, I've had a few clients that have had their pasta gate moments, and friends swearing at me or swearing at other people in the group, getting a little bit stroppy. But I understand it, and I say to them, they will learn a lot from that one experience. And it's those experiences of discomfort that allow us to learn, to allow us to better deal with what's going on, and ultimately allow us to better prepare, and in that case, eat more, but also understand that an element of fitness is going to be required, and if you're not going to be fit, then it's going to be harder. And so the two main points that I've learned over the years to reduce that sort of discomfort of physical exertion, one of them is maintain fitness. And I know that if I don't maintain fitness, when I next go out on a mountain adventure, it's going to be harder. So for example, after the first coronavirus lockdown, I started running trips again as soon as I was allowed, as soon as it was safe to do so. And the first 3 or 4 trips, I felt them. Easy mountain hiking, and I felt the exertion because I hadn't been out hiking regularly. So I know when we're allowed back outside again, the first few trips are going to be tough because I haven't been doing the training. I've been doing this talking to a camera. And then the second learning is eat lots. You need the fuel. It doesn't matter what you're eating. You just need to eat. There's no point going on a diet if you're out hiking all the time, because by virtue of hiking all the time, you're not going to put on weight. You just need to eat for that fuel. And both of those things, maintaining fitness, eating lots, they're both in our control. And if they're managed well, then there's not going to be any discomfort at all. So you're going to have that comfort because there's not going to be any discomfort. Now, the other area of physical discomfort, I guess, is obviously going to be the natural elements, especially in the UK, because we're a funny lot. We'll go into the mountains whatever the weather. We could have a day where it's going to be sunny, it's going to be windy, there's going to be sleet, rain and snow all in one day. It's the beauty of hiking mountains in the UK, I guess. And you've got to be pretty lucky to regularly go out into the mountains and to never have to contend with bad weather in the mountains. Now, I don't go into the mountains to be uncomfortable, and I want to be as comfortable as possible so I can enjoy the environment that I'm in. And protecting yourself from the elements is by far the easiest fix of all of them. And it's something that everyone seems to love to do, and that's buy new kit. Now, I've been in fairly extreme environments with temperatures of -40, storm force winds, and outside of the UK. And on those occasions, I've been perfectly comfortable because I've had the right kit for those conditions to keep me comfortable. And if you have the right down jacket in super cold weather, it's just having a warm hug in really, really awful conditions. I get a lot of questions from clients when we're talking about going out in the winter. They might have had experience in the summer, and what puts them off winter mountaineering or winter hiking is cold. And it's a common question people ask is it going to be cold? Of course, yes, it's winter. The weather is going to be colder, you're going to get snow, you're going to get ice. But if you have the right kit, that takes that element out of it completely. It really is as simple as that. You can be just as warm in the winter mountains as you are in the summer mountains. And I much prefer the winter to the summer, because then I can adjust the layers accordingly. Whereas in the summer, if it's too hot, there's only so much you can take off without staying legal, I guess, and decent. But actually, it was in the Peak District that I was the least comfortable. So I've experienced these wild weathers around the world, but it was the Peak District. It was 4 degrees. It was chucking it down with rain, and really strong wind. And I was on an outdoor assessment course, and on these courses, there's a lot of stopping, standing around, so you're not allowing your body heat to keep you warm. And this a long time ago, I had very old kit, and it wasn't appropriate for the conditions. And by the end of that day, I was almost hypothermic. It was the most uncomfortable I've ever been in the mountains. But again, it's something I learnt from. The importance of staying dry. The jacket I was wearing wasn't a Gore-Tex jacket, and now I know if I had a budget to go out and spend on new kit, most of that budget is going to go on a Gore-Tex jacket, because that's going to stop me from the wind and it's going to stop me getting wet. And as long as I'm not going to get wet, I'm not going to get cold. It really is as simple as that. And so with experience, you learn what kit works for you, what doesn't, packing systems and layering systems, to give yourself the best chance of staying warm, staying dry, and enjoying the environment. And so if you can remove that effect of the weather just by wearing the right clothes, that's just one less thing to worry about in terms of being uncomfortable. So you talk about comfort in uncomfortable places, that is the easiest fix. It then allows me to focus on guiding, managing people, and then just enjoying this environment, which is the best in the world. And so for me, going to the mountains isn't about bravado and challenge and being uncomfortable. I love being in the mountains. I want to enjoy the landscape and experience raw nature. And so I'm going to do as much as I can to make myself as comfortable as possible. And so wearing those layers is really going to help. It's where I feel most at home, and I don't want to feel uncomfortable at home, so why would I do it if I was uncomfortable? And also you've got the mindfulness. People talk about mindfulness and yoga and meditation, but if you step out of your comfort zone, you are hyper aware of what you're doing and where you are. If you're hanging on a rock face or you're on a whiteout on the Cairngorm Plateau, I can guarantee you will be focused 100% on the present in that moment. And so ultimately, the more we step out of our comfort zone, the bigger our comfort zone gets, that balloon gets, and therefore the more we can achieve, the more we can experience. And experience, there's no fast track for experience. You can't read on experience, you just have to do it. But it's about doing it regularly enough, but slowly, to build that experience and maintain or retain the information that you're getting through those experiences. You take small steps and the bigger things will happen. And I talk about it on the bigger expeditions, about going slowly. It's amazing how far you can travel by going super, super, super slow. As long as you just keep moving, you're going to get there. If you do nothing, everything stagnates and you're not going to get closer to the objective. People don't climb mountains by standing still. So you just have to go super, super slow, and over time you build the experience to understand what works, what doesn't, to ease that discomfort, and then everything becomes comfortable. And it's ultimately a cycle. So it starts with the mental element of the fear of the unknown and just doing it. That's my mindset, is just do it. And then you have to have that positive mindset to do it and continue doing it. which then will lead round to the physical aspect, dealing with the weather, dealing with fatigue. Again, you can manage them really easily. And then through all that, you get the experience, and it feeds all the way back, and you start again. And so you've got that better mental mindset to then realise that last time it was easy. You actually learnt a lot. You got a lot from it, and it was a great experience. Let's do it again. And then you continue that cycle, the experience builds, and that's where you become comfortable in what you might perceive right now as discomfort. And so just to finish off, it's something that I tell groups or individuals within groups that may be experiencing discomfort, and it's certainly something that's helped me get through this pandemic. And it's really, really basic, and it's essentially, look, this discomfort is temporary. It's not going to last forever. And so if you experience that discomfort, just push through, because it's not going to last forever. But the rewards that you get at the end of it, the experiences and the achievements, will last you for the rest of your life.